I want to welcome back the listeners of Torah Anytime, and again, I will always consider the dear friends of Yibaneh for the second installment of KLM, Kavanah LeMitzvos. And I thought, look, now let's start applying. I want to teach you how to apply. What better way to apply it than to deal with the upcoming holiday, Purim. Purim's on its way. Let's see how Kavanah LeMitzvos can impact our Purim. There is a king, and this king had a very faithful, hardworking Eved, a servant. And the king says to the Eved, he says, there's a treasure in the forest. I want you to clear a path for the treasure. So we have the treasure. This was no simple forest. It had wild animals and predators, and it was filled with thorns and thistles and all that kind of. You understand what we're looking at. It took this servant 6 months to clear a path. He made some sort of like the equivalent of the old times, a fence on both sides to guard against the predators. He cleared it. He worked so hard and with such dedication. And then he comes back to the king and he says, the path is ready. The king looks at him, he says, I wanted a path? Where's the treasure? You think I just wanted you to make a path? Why didn't you bring back the treasure? This has such a message for us mitzvah observers. Here's how we can look at the Torah. How many Torah commandments? Well, the famous number is 613. What it can seem like is it's 613 different homework assignments. I got to do this. I got to help the lady across the street. I've got to observe the Shabbos. And it could seem like disparate, going in all these directions. Rav Yerucham from Mir says, no. Your mitzvahs are leading to treasures. I saw this in a beautiful sefer, another life-changing sefer called Tachlis HaMitzvahs. Mitzvahs, according to the Rambam in Mor Nevuchim, and the Gra at the end of Koheles, mitzvahs indeed have a purpose. You're supposed to bring back a treasure. 2 treasures. What are they? And this, I'm telling you, I didn't think I could become more excited than all the consciousness I gained from Kavanah LeMitzvos, but I did from realizing this. There's 2 categories, famous categories of mitzvahs. Bein Adam Lamakom, between man and God, and Bein Adam Lechavero. Each one is cutting a path towards a treasure. What's the treasure for when you, let's say, let's make it when you observe Shabbat, when you pray, when you learn Torah? What's the treasure that you're attaining in potential? Dveikus. Dveikus is not merely closeness to Hashem, it's attachment, clinging. So Hashem is not physical. So how do you cling to Hashem? There's one explanation of Gemara, but according to Ramban and also the Ibn Ezra, etc., Dveikus means that your thoughts and your feelings and of your soul and your mind, they attach to Hashem. That there can be a certain kind of connection there, and that's called Dveikus. Why is this so powerful? If I realize that I'm sitting here in a Torah class, I'm listening to Torah, and that the more I engage in it, and the more I feel it, and the more I think about it, that's a treasure. I'm cleaving to Hashem, which itself is a mitzvah. Dveikus, bo tidbak, to him you should cling, right? So everything you do between you and Hashem is leads to the treasure. It's not an isolated act. It all leads to dveikus, to clinging, even in this world. What's the other treasure? What does Bein Adam L'Chaveru do? It's really hard to believe this, but you become, if you will, qualification, Hashem-like. You become as much like Hashem as a human being can. That's what being is saying, giving a sincere good morning. You know, when you say good morning to someone, you're giving them a blessing. But we usually just say it as what they call salutation. I remember there's one rabbi in yeshiva, I'd say, good morning, Rabbi, go, amen. Like you don't expect that, right? But here's the thing: when you're kind, it says, here's how you walk down the path of Hashem. Now, Hashem, by the way, this is the path less traveled, because Hashem is a completely giving and selfless being, and He says, walk down my path. And if you do, right, every time you're gracious, every time you're compassionate, you have just become more, if you will, lahavdil, Hashem-like. Let's get to Purim now. What does this have to do with Purim? Now we have a framework for all the mitzvahs of Purim. And by the way, we're just getting started. We're just unraveling this. The first thing to do is not say, how am I going to do all this? We're going to talk about the psychology and how to deal with the Yetzer Hara when it comes to kavanah l'mitzvos. I mean, I have to be honest with you. And the last thing I said, please spread the word about this. You're going to help people and follow. Don't tell the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara is so against this, I promise you. But the thing is this. So here's what I want you to realize. Here's the way you can look at Purim. I have some mitzvahs on Purim where my feelings and thoughts can cleave to Hashem. Megillas Esther. I can fulfill the mitzvah of Yichud Hashem, to recognize that every part of life is designed to bring us to a beautiful conclusion. That's the mitzvah Yichud Hashem. For example, right? That's an example of Bein Makom. There's Hakaras Tov. Why are we rejoicing for what Hashem did for us and continues to do for us? That brings you the treasure of dveikus. And then, here we go. Ready? Shalach Manos is for Purim. What's the difference? It says Hashem's most primary qualities are that He's Hanun V'Rachum, gracious and compassionate. What's the difference? The difference is this. Gracious is when you do something not because they deserve it and not because they need it. That's graciousness. And when you help someone who's in pain and suffering, that's compassion. Now, look at this. Matanas Levyonin. What is that? You can inculcate divine compassion because you're giving to people who are really needy. That's very compassionate. What about Shalach Manos? Right? You're giving to your friends. Are you giving to your friends because they're suffering and you feel for them? No. It's graciousness. And so you have to realize this is taking us on a beautiful path where there's treasures to bring back every mitzvah if we have that in mind. So I encourage you, you can even just do this. Step one with Purim is to just say, you can speak to Hashem, just express your intentions. You can do this even just mentally. You say, Hashem, I'm going to fulfill Tainus Esther, the Kriyas Megillah or Shmias Megillah. I'm going to do the mitzvah of Shalach Manos and Matanas Lamim because you commanded me to. That's step number one. We will talk again and again what that achieves, which is incredible. But not only that, Hashem, my goal is for the feelings and thoughts of my neshama to cleave to you as much as possible. And I want to walk the path less traveled. Halachta b'drachav. I want to be like you, selfless, giving, compassionate, patient, etc., etc., etc. And these will bring you just glorious treasures. So I want to wish everybody a Purim Sameach. And in the next shiurim, we'll talk about how we're going to infuse our lives with more meaning and purpose. Okay. Purim is a day where we have a mitzvah, medivrei Kabbalah. What does that mean? That's not like mysticism. That means that the origin of the mitzvahs of Purim come from the Megillas Esther. We have to realize Mordechai and Esther had a nevuah, or it was called Ruach HaKodesh. That makes the mitzvahs of Purim so powerful. They're almost like Torah commandments. Now, we have something to deal with right now, and that is there's a mitzvah to be besimcha on Purim, to rejoice. And there are people who are in tunnels. There are hostages right now. There are people who are suffering so much. Klal Yisrael is in trouble and at war. So how do we deal with this? Okay, it's very important. So the first thing I want to recommend is, there's a beautiful Yiddish saying, and I don't know Yiddish, but it basically translates like this. A parent is only as happy as his saddest child, right? So we are going to rejoice, we should, but we must stop and we must say Tehillim, we must pray. At the Suda they say is the biggest Eitz Ratzon to pray. You would think, for sure, prayer on Purim is incredible. But at that Suda, the doors of the Shemayim are open. So let's not forget our saddest children and our saddest parents, really, okay? By taking our time. And the other thing I want to encourage is that the more the simcha is because you want to vakus. It's because Hashem wants us to rejoice and appreciate what He did for us and what He'll do. If you do it for that, who is what we call the Baal Milchamos? Right? Who is the master of war? Who is the Ish Milchama? It's Hashem. So guess what? If we're from a place of purity and appreciation of Karas HaTov, from that place we rejoice, but we don't forget those in pain. That's only going to help us in the war. So that's the thing. This is sort of an introduction. The next one, we're going to talk about the mitzvahs of Tehillim and praying for those in need. That'll be the next segment. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Sure, and I'll give this to you anyhow, because you should use this at your... this is meant to be a bookmark.
Shir Chadash